Cost-cutting, retrenchments and hiring freezes. There wasn't much to cheer about for employees in 2012 as companies battled a slowing economy and dented sentiments, tightening their purse strings. But as we usher in a new year, will things change for the better? What's the outlook for hiring in 2013 and which sectors are looking the hottest? That's our first discussion tonight on We Mean Business. And joining in on the show with their expert views, Sangeeta Lala, Senior Vice President and co-founder TeamLease Services, joins us from our Bangalore studios. Shiv Agrawal, MD at ABC Consultants, joins us on a link from New Delhi. And Ambarish Raghuvanshi, the Group President, Finance and CFO at InfoEdge, which promotes Naukri.com, also joins in from the capital. Let's begin the discussion, in fact, with Sangeeta. Why don't you really recap for us how 2012 was for employees before we go on and discuss how 2013 would be. Not a great year at all for employees.
Hi, thanks so much. Yes, absolutely, not a great year for job seekers, especially, not so much for the organizations. But what happened was that if we sort of break up the whole hiring scenario, typically there's the whole junior, low-end, startup, fresher hiring that happens, and then there's obviously the mid and the senior that goes on as regular part of business expansion. Now, what we saw was that the rate of growth in business really did not happen in 2012 on the negative side, which affected the junior levels to a large extent in terms of campus hiring going on at an all-time low. And also for the junior level, the hiring was extremely, it was volume driven, but it was extremely selective. It was extremely driven by the kind of quality and the service level requirement that the business required. So that was one story in terms of the new fresh lot or coming into the job scenario. At the mid and the senior level also, what we saw was that there was hiring which was on, but extremely muted in the sense that typically hiring timelines took a lot longer to close. The negotiations were extremely tough when it came to the final offer table, and a lot of organizations also merged a lot of roles for their senior mandates. So typically if you had somebody who was doing, say, an operations and a project infra role, in earlier days we would have two people managing such a role, but we saw that last year companies actually went about merging a lot of roles. I think it was more from a view of cost cutting, of saying that the productivity had to be questioned. So with all of that, we saw an overall drop. And it obviously affected the candidates to a large extent. Candidates became cautious and they negotiated even harder so that they make the right decisions.
Right. Ambarish, you know, what were some of the bright spots in 2012 before we get to our discussion in 2013? You know, any sectors, any particular areas which did well in what was definitely not a great year as far as the economy was concerned?
No, I think across the board, most sectors were fairly weak on hiring sentiment. So there was not really, you know, great news in any. The only sort of good thing was that most of the slowdown was sort of gradual and linear. So it wasn't like, you know, 2008 when everything froze all at one go. So, you know, I think companies took some time to adjust to it. And I think, you know, most, employees were lucky because they managed to get wage increments in April or May before the slowdown really came upon us. So, you know, I think 2013 will be probably a little tougher on that respect. So the only sort of positive from an employee perspective was that 2012 they managed to get wage increments, which will probably be a little more difficult in 2013.
Right. In fact, TeamLease has come out with a survey.
And, you know, like IT services.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Ambarish.
No, I was just saying that IT is, you know, a big sort of bellwether for what happens, at least in the service industries, because it affects not just IT companies, which is a very large ecosystem in India, but it has a cascading effect on several other service industries where they tap into talent from or people shift to other industries. And that was fairly weak through most of 2012.
Right, I want to come back to all of those sector-specific, trends that we've been seeing. But Shiv, what's your outlook for 2013? TeamLease, of course, has come out with a survey, so I want to get Sangeeta in as well. But is it going to be a tad bit better? Is it going to be significantly better? Is it going to be pretty much the same as 2012 probably was?
It's unpredictable completely at the moment. I think what is predictable is that nothing is going to improve in the next 3 or 4 months. There is some talk, as there has been right through the last year or so, about sentiment improving, perhaps in a quarter or 2 quarters from now, maybe because of some of the work the government did a few months ago. But to be very honest, I think it's unpredictable, gloomy. There's really no, I don't see any great silver lining in the hiring outlook, certainly for the next 3 to 6 months. We all hope things will look up after that.
Sangeeta, in fact, that's what the TeamLease IIJT report also says. For your FY13 Q1, you're not sounding very bullish, but give us a sense of some of the key findings that you have over there and what the outlook is for the entire year as well.
Sure. To start off with, I think Jan, Feb, March, first quarter of the calendar year is generally a slow quarter across the level, whether it's a good year or a downturn. It's always been seen that this is a time when companies are either have just started planning for the next year if they're following a calendar year, or they are getting ready for the whole appraisal and the whole performance feedback process. So it's generally a slow year. But if I compare it to say a 2010, 11, that year when it was slightly better, its jobs are definitely lower by at least about 10 to 15% than what it was 2 years at the same time ago. But in spite of that, I think one of the things that we see is that there are 2-3 sectors which still seem to be stable in terms of hiring, which are really the large volume sectors like retail, FMCG, consumer, and which is a good thing, because these are the sectors which are frankly those so-called sunrise, which give jobs to the larger majority of the population or the freshers passing out. So that has stayed constant, though we heard IT is low and it continues to be quite pessimistic. ITS is also not looking great as per our study, and even infrastructure for that matter. We were very bullish on infrastructure mid last year, because infra real estate was one sector where we actually saw a lot of market growth, projects starting or coming to an end. But I think now is a phase when the set of new projects or rollouts, whether it's a commercial, residential project, infrastructure has not really happened. The planning has not yet happened. Right. So I think that sector also looks to be down for at least a quarter. I think overall, I think for the year it will be pretty much similar, though one of the major sectors which has really tanked since the last year and a half has been BFSI. I mean, the entire financial and banks and financial services has gone at an all-time low, and that frankly speaks a lot for how the economy is doing overall. So we are hoping that by June, July, BFSI picks up by some margin, because then that will sort of give a sort of a flag off whether the other industries can really follow or not. So that's something which we are really crossing our fingers and hoping that at some stage that deadlock sort of opens up for BFSI and starts hiring.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app, fully optimized for Retina display, full screen view, faster response time, and Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.